So as we get further and further into the summer, we're approaching the end of Summer League, the free agency moratorium has been lifted, and the further we get into the offseason, the more messy the contract situation with Josh Giddey is becoming. Because while most around the Bulls beat have reported previously that the Bulls and Giddey's representation have been negotiating and those conversations have been positive and productive thus far, but what was interesting was seeing that despite Giddey being in Vegas for Summer League, unlike some of the other guys on the roster, such as Kobe, Patrick Williams, Ayo, Kevin Huerter, even the newcomer in Isaac Okoro, while all of those guys have been sitting courtside at the Bulls' first 2 Summer League games, Josh Giddey is nowhere to be found in attendance at these games, which would suggest maybe these conversations around his contract aren't going as smoothly as one would think. And so the question I often get, which I've been asking myself, is what happens if there is a standstill? What happens if neither side is willing to budge on what they believe to be a fair deal? And what happens if Giddey even refuses the qualifying offer? Well, let's talk about it. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, while I still firmly believe that Giddey is going to be coming back in a Bulls uniform to start next season, even if it means playing on the 1-year qualifying offer, it is getting a little more tricky to the point where I wonder if it's going to start damaging the relationship between Giddey and the organization, so much so that it impacts his play on the court next season. Because one thing we do know about Giddey is that he internalizes things quite a bit, at least at this, younger stage in his career. At the start of this season, he admitted he was overthinking things a bit, being on a new team, often trying to do too much, getting in his head when he would turn the ball over and missing shots. And then last season, of course, everything going on off the court, I should say, in Oklahoma City with all the allegations around being with an underage girl. So what you don't want to happen is to have all these contract negotiations lingering in the back of his mind as we go into this upcoming season. You want to ensure that his head is in a good place and he feels he is being compensated relative to his value. The problem, though, and we've been talking about this all year, even in the middle of the season, the Bulls have all of the leverage. And that's even more so the case now, with cap space being all but dried up around the league and the Bulls knowing Josh Giddey, no matter how much he demands money, the Bulls know he's not going to be able to go out and get an offer from another team, not one that's going to pay him $30 million a year, hell, not even $20 million a year at this point. And so I'm sure the Bulls are remaining firm in their stance on where they would like to see Josh Giddey's next contract. My guess is somewhere in the $22 to $25 million a year range, and they're saying that that's the most they're going to be willing to do. Take it or take the qualifying offer, which is slated to be at $11.1 million on a 1-year deal for Giddey next season. Now, I will say the only reason I'm not as concerned about how the Bulls are handling these discussions and sticking to their guns on the amount and length they're looking for in a deal is because you see that all of the other remaining restricted free agents in the market, Jonathan Kuminga, Quentin Grimes, Cam Thomas, all of these guys are solid players who are expecting to get paid. None of them have reached deals with their respective teams. And if they haven't made any progress on contract negotiations, then it just further illustrates not only how much power the respective teams have in these scenarios, but also just how bad it is to be a restricted free agent right now. Like, it'd be a little different if Josh Giddey was sitting alone on an island as the only remaining unsigned restricted free agent. If that were the case, it would lead you to believe that the Bulls really aren't negotiating in good faith with Josh Giddey's camp, which could lead to further problems down the line. But in any event, as the days go on and we still don't reach a deal, it does make you question whether this is potentially just going to drag out until the start of the season in October. Like, if both sides are remaining firm on their best and final offer, the only thing holding any of this up is a deadline to be able to get a deal done by league rules. And that deadline is October 1st. And as I started thinking about it more and more, because yes, there is a world where the Bulls front office and Giddey simply don't talk or engage in contract negotiations until then, especially when, at the time, nothing has been reported on third-party interest for even a potential sign-and-trade deal, it's very possible that this just remains on hold until October. There is nothing pushing either side at this point to get a deal done until they get closer to that date. And that even means for Giddey as well, who could potentially be leaving a lot of money on the table by holding out. But what happens if that October 1st deadline passes and the Bulls still don't have a new deal with Giddey? And what if Giddey refuses to accept the qualifying offer? Well, I asked this of Bobby Marks on Twitter after he put out a brief overview of the timelines and deadlines for restricted free agents, where he calls out July 13th was the last day for teams to pull the qualifying offer on their restricted free agents, meaning they would waive their right to match any offer sheet their free agent receives and the player would become an unrestricted free agent, which of course the Bulls did not do. And that October 1st was the last day for players to sign the qualifying offer, which is probably around the start of training camp. And while I didn't get a response from Bobby Marks, I did get a response from another NBA cap expert named David Lord, in which he indicated that if no deal is reached by October 1st, and the team does not extend the qualifying offer further beyond that deadline, which they never do, then there is no standing offer on the table for the player to take. From there, the team can make any offer on any terms, meaning they wouldn't be bound to giving even the qualifying offer of $11.1 million. They could even give less if they wanted to, or they could give him no offer at all, which means he's without a contract. And effectively, like any player who goes into the season without a contract, they're a free agent. However, they would remain a restricted free agent, because my assumption at that point was that, okay, well, they're just going to be an unrestricted free agent and could sign with any team, and the Bulls wouldn't have the ability to match. But no, restricted free agency remains. And if there's no deal made all season long, meaning Giddey doesn't get signed by any team and doesn't play in the NBA for a whole year, he would still be a restricted free agent in 2026, and the process would start all over again. Now, it's not going to get to that point, because as much as Giddey may remain firm in his assertion that he's worth $30 million a year and won't budge until he gets that, we all know he's not going to run the risk of just not playing at all next season and getting paid nothing. Like, at that point, he's going to take the $11 million qualifying offer, bet on himself, and hope for an even bigger payday in 2026 as an unrestricted free agent when teams are going to have more cap space in 2026. But regardless, I could see this being a scenario in which it's going to be quite some time before we see any announcement on Giddey signing a new deal, likely leading up to training camp. This is going to be a big gamble on Giddey's part, because yes, he is worth more than $20 million a year. Yes, he likely could hold out and try and secure something in the $25 million a year range. But if the Bulls are offering anything in that $22 to $25 million a year range, and he's declining and holding out for something better, that's leaving a lot of money on the table to take the qualifying offer and hoping to get something better in 2026. Because right away in that first year, you're sacrificing $11 to $14 million, not to mention the fact that you're walking away from guaranteed money long term in what would presumably be a 5-year deal. Yes, you could ball out in this upcoming season, which as a Bulls fan, I hope happens. You could have an incredible year, make an all-star team, and secure an even bigger bag in 2026 that pays you north of $35 million a year. But the likelihood of that happening, where you get more than what you're currently projected to receive, which is still a big payday, by the way, in my opinion, is so small. And does it outweigh the risk of potentially getting injured this upcoming year and tanking your value on the open market even further, or having a bad season? Like, is it worth the risk of potentially having things go so wrong where you could have otherwise signed a 5-year offer sheet of guaranteed money, even if it's a little below what you were hoping to receive? Also, I blame the Magic and the Raptors for this and setting unrealistically high expectations for what a player like Josh Giddey is worth, giving Jalen Suggs $150 million, Emmanuel Quickley $175 million, and now you have Giddey wanting those type of deals, which, to be fair, he's more or less on par when it comes to the level of caliber of those players. Very different players in terms of their skill set, but on par when it comes to their level of compensation. So yes, if I'm Josh Giddey, it's reasonable to expect the same type of deal these guys got. But just because those respective teams overpaid for their players, which they did, it doesn't mean the Bulls should do so as well. So anyway, the showdown between Giddey and the Bulls continues. Who's going to blink first? We'll have to wait and see. Let me know what you guys think and how long you think this is going to take to play out. Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.